Doing something for the first time is wild. And when you think of the outdoors, it's inherently wild. I think the most important thing for me is sharing an activity, sharing what I love with people that have not experienced that or have some kind of barrier related to it. The magic of being able to create that bond, that connection with an activity, a person, a place, that's special. All right, well, welcome into another episode of Sincerely Yours Outdoors. It's your boy Marcus here with the broski today. Yep. How you feeling? How we feeling today?
Feeling good.
And of course, and we got Leroy Adams here, the dog. Man, I'm feeling good. It feels so good to be in communion and spending time with people that look like us, you know?
Yeah.
In spaces like this. So just being able to spend short time with you at this point in time, Leroy, has just been so critical and like so empowering.
Yeah.
You know, to hear about you and hear about what you're doing. Yeah. So that's how I'm feeling. I don't know about you or Leroy.
The same, man. It's great, you know, like you said, to be here in a space like this, where people that look like us, but also have had very similar lived experiences, you know, and are all here just expressing that and sharing that, you know, and it's provided such a sense of clarity and upliftment that, you know, making going back home to face whatever is there almost seem, you know, inconsequential, like I got it, you know.
Yeah, I feel you on that, man. I feel as if I'm just surrounded by family.
Yeah,
like literally
100%, bro.
Yeah. I walked in, and the first day, I think, you know, everyone says like, you never know what you're walking into, and I was like, man, I literally don't know what I'm walking into, but I am so happy to be here. It feels like, you know, we're at the barbecue just kicking it with the family, but it's been such intentional love that's been shared, and I think the ideas that have kind of bubbled to the top have been beautiful and aligned with all of partnerships and continuations of all of our families getting outside.
Absolutely.
So to say all of that, I mean, we're literally kicking it at the North Cascades Institute, which is literally beautiful. Yeah, I'm like blown away. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm in a movie and I'm just an actor on set, but man, this is crazy. So yeah, I mean, Leroy, we're kicking it with you today, and it's been, like Derek said, just a pleasure to get to know you and share space with you. Can you start off by just introducing yourself? Like, tell us a little bit about you, what you got going on, and then we'll get everything rolling.
Awesome. So I'm Leroy Adams. Just to you know, jump into it. So what I do is I publish a magazine, currently known as the Buddy Pass. We're going through a name change, but it's currently known as the Buddy Pass Travel Magazine, and it's for Black travelers.
Yeah.
It's for the Black community. You know, again, being in spaces like this and seeing how we show up differently, and then how we receive differently in outdoor spaces, in travel, in community, in the world. I felt it was really necessary to have a home, a publication that could really speak to our experiences in a very authentic way, something that wasn't represented in the current travel industry, travel infrastructure, travel media. And so I thought that it was very necessary, especially considering all the different experiences I've had traveling the world as a Black man and seeing how the world has responded to me, and then how I have had to respond back to the world, if it be in India, South Africa, Taiwan, wherever. You know, I've always felt that it was necessary for more of us to see those stories and experiences. And so that is really what brought me here, where I am today in my life, the purpose that I am pursuing, or the purpose that I think, you know, is for me at this moment in my life, to really be the public, create this publication, this new magazine for our community.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And, as an entrepreneur and as a businessman and
Yeah.
all the things that you are, these stories and where you are now always starts somewhere.
Yeah.
And the timing is so different for everyone,
Yeah.
I can recall like my first experience that led me to where I am, and it was like when I was in middle school,
Yeah.
What does that look like for you? Like, can you recall that time as to like what you're doing now with the Buddy Pass, or even just like as a consumer of
Absolutely.
of the outdoors?
Absolutely.
What was that, and tell us a little bit of what that looked like.
Well, so those two things are very different in terms of where the origin of, or the idea of the magazine and where that started is different than my introduction to the outdoors. So I'll speak to both of them.
Okay.
So with the magazine in particular, I lived in Ethiopia for 2.5 years with the Peace Corps. And it was about a year into my service, and I'm at my host town in the Baguna. We're about 60 kilometers from the Eritrean border. And I'm a year into my community. I'm a teacher. And I built these great relationships with all of my teacher friends and the community and what have you. And I remember one of my close friends, he was like my community partner. His name was Kibron. One day, he told me I didn't walk like a Black American. And I was like, what do you mean I don't walk like how do Black Americans walk? And several of the Ethiopian teachers got up and pretend to walk as if their pants were hanging off their butt. And I'm like, where did y'all get that from? Like, who told you that Black people walk like that? And they pointed at their TV in the teacher's lounge. And I was still trying to figure out, I was like, what did you see on the TV? And they started to describe Lil Wayne. And at the time I didn't have locks. I had a low cut.
Okay.
They're like, oh, the guy with the locks and the diamond teeth and the dance and the rapper. I'm like, Lil Wayne? And they're like, yeah. And that moment, and there were several others like that, but that was, I think, particularly the first time where I realized I was not the author of my story. And that even though I was not the author of my story, there was still a story out there. And not only was it circulating within the US, it was being broadcasted to the world.
Yeah.
And then I saw several instances of like Black people's stories that were not our own, that were being authored by others, but they were being spread out there into the world, be it through sports, fashion, music, what have you. And in that moment, my love with storytelling became my purpose. It's like we are out here traveling. Travel is a very important experience of life. There are so many beautiful stories that are captured through it. But more importantly, if more of us are gonna travel, how do we make each other feel safe in those spaces and feel welcoming? And it's through storytelling. And so in that moment, I realized like I need to figure out a way to tell my story and tell other people's stories. And with the outdoor space in particular, after I then started the Buddy Pass Travel Magazine, my focus was initially on international travel, because that was, as you see my bag, that was all I knew.
Yeah.
And then I meet Alex Bailey, the founder of Black Outside, and I open up the magazine to allow other writers and content creators to come into this space. And not only do they all feel home and safe and welcome, but now they're starting to share with me, wait, we also as Black people travel this way. It's not just international travel, it's in the outdoors. And so I stepped into that space and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of us. And then I entered into that space. And so I'm here in North Cascade with you all, right? That's a part of it. And so now I'm like going on more hikes, visiting more national parks, connecting with Black folks in the outdoors to really learn, okay, how are we showing up in that space? How are we receiving that space? And there's so many amazing, painful, but also amazing stories that are there. And so those have been my sort of introductions and origins, if you will, in terms of how I started the magazine and then how I then also brought in outdoor experiences.
And I want to pick up right where you left off, because I think what you have to say is going to be extremely powerful here. You mentioned of how you show up. Let's talk through how you show up in outdoor spaces, which was ever present in everything that you said there, with the interpretations of others of how they see you, but you being the steward of your own writing.
Yeah.
How do you show up in the spaces of outdoors?
Yeah, I think the word authentically comes to mind. So one of the articles that appeared in our second issue was titled "The Do-Rag in the Outdoors," and the author was basically making the case that a reason we as Black people don't participate in the outdoors enough is because we feel we have to suppress a part of our cultural identity. So her article was really beautiful and showed about how the do-rag is welcomed in the outdoors. And it's a utility for us because it's used to protect our crown, our hair. And so, you know, you meet many Black men and women and say, well, I need to wrap up my hair and I can't do that because I don't want to appear too Black. You know, I don't want to scare somebody off, you know. And so for me, when it comes to being in the outdoors, one is showing up authentically, but it's also showing up in many ways what feels like into a relationship. I'm coming to share as much of myself as possible with the trees, with water, which is what I consider my spiritual element. I need to be near water, which is a perfect setting for this, right?
What a backdrop, right? Yeah.
You know, so I'm showing up in the outdoor space to like talk to my partner, to let everything out, all the stressors, all the anxieties, all the insecurities, like to speak to the beauty of all of this and then walk away healed, you know, and then take care of it while I'm here. But I feel like I'm walking into a relationship, you know, where I'm able to like just be as vulnerable and as free as possible and gain some healing and some growth in that.
That is a beautiful way to state, honestly, like that I have not heard before, of like the way in which a relationship with the outdoors is a two-way street.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioning stewardship being given and vulnerability and authenticity being given, and what being returned residually is like you feeling full.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
you being able to contribute in other capacities.
Absolutely.
And you feeling empowered.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And all of those three things are like absolutely incredible. And that's honestly what we hope to cultivate in everyone.
Yeah.
You know? Within being outdoors and being safe in these spaces there to feel just as what you are feeling, which I'm sure is what everyone is striving. As you said that, I was like, man, I want that.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that is incredible. Marcus, I'll let you jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, man, that was powerful. Right when you were saying it and eloquently stating it, I was just blown away because I was like, man, that's special.
Yeah.
That is truly special. And I hope that we can all facilitate or even just play a part in that experience, either personally with nature or being in a space that, you know, kids, families can see that as well, which is like beautiful. I think just to kind of tag on to the question a little bit, and it's specifically around what you do in your publication, you know, we think about the Green Book. And the, you know, the importance of that for Black motorists and travelers. And the safety of not going through a sundown town, or not going through a spot that, you know, individuals are looking for you. Speak to it about, I don't want to cast any aspersions, but speak to what that looks like in your work. Is that a component, or is it a celebratory experience that you're saying in reaching out to publications and curators and saying, like, let's celebrate and experience a moment and display that in a manner where individuals know and feel and understand that it's a welcoming space?
That's a great question, man. And that's one thing I'm sort of processing through and working through now. And I'm leaning on the experience of some of our editors who have been writers and editors for decades. How do you, my goal for this publication is to bring joy and excitement and experiences. But I also want to recognize the historical components that have prevented us from these spaces. Victor Hugo Green being a great example of that, right? It's like, he wants to show you where you can go and eat and feel safe and welcome, but he's also making you very much aware of the dangers that you have to navigate in order to get to those spaces.
Exactly.
So in the same way with the magazine, I want to show Black people where you can go and feel safe and welcome, be that Japan, Korea, wherever. But I want to do it in a way that doesn't discourage you, right? Because you'll see like articles, 10 places Black people don't feel safe around the world. And no shade to anyone else, but I hate that. because you automatically are discouraging us
Yeah.
based off your own experience
Yeah.
from going to these places. I'd rather reframe that and say 10 places, you know, that we should go to, but then also somewhere embedded in that article are the dangers that you have experienced, you know, the discomforts, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fine line that I'm learning to sort of balance, where I want to celebrate
Yeah.
the dopeness that I've seen from our community
Yeah.
around the world, while also acknowledging like the historical component of it all. There's a reason
Mm-hmm.
many of us in our communities feel as if international travel is not something Black people do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were prevented from getting a passport. You were
Right.
told to stay within the confines of your community. You were policed to not, as soon as you stepped outside of those confines, it was either danger you perceived or someone perceived you as dangerous.
Yes.
And so therefore you go back to your community. And so this isn't for you. Living in Ireland is not for you, right? All of these different things. And so it is a fine line that I'm balancing. But I think we've done a really great job with it. But my core mission is to celebrate what we have done in the in the travel space, outdoor travel space, hiking, skiing, international travel, domestic travel, wherever it may be, and also giving our history back to us in a way through that process.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, you're literally bringing it home today.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting in a space that we walked in, and I think the first 2 hours, Carter was like, historically, this spot has been seen as not for us.
Exactly.
And now look at us.
Exactly.
And right when he said that, and I didn't come in and look at the ancestral history. I know that's a slight on my part. I should have done my homework and background to know exactly where we're walking into. But when he said that, I felt it.
Yeah.
It's tangible, and it was emotionally driven because I could sense from him that as a steward of this land, as a board member, as a activist, that he's done the work on our behalf for us to come in and sit here and look at that. You know, just incredible. So hearing you say that was like, I feel you. It's
man.
like literally right there. So.
And it's like you say, that the work that someone like a CJ, someone like a Mr. Carter, bro, because I'm seeing myself as I'm doing the work and I'm going through the process of it all, the ups and the downs, the depression, the anxiety, the stress of just, like you said, trying to create something for nothing, but you know it's so important for your community that you just gotta get it done. And so to see what CJ and Mr. Carter have created here, but then to also recognize and honor the work that it took, you know, for us to get here. It's like, man, like, bless you, bro. Like, I know there were some sleepless nights. I know there were some people you had to convince why we deserve to be in this space, you know? And it's, so you just give love and respect to folks who are like yourselves, just going through the grind of it all, man. That's to create something you know is needed in the world.
And to follow on that same accord, I mean, religiosity, like spirituality, taking that all aside, I mean, whoever and if, you know, you believe in a higher power, the mention of God won't give you more than you can't bear. But sometimes it's really hard to have broad shoulders, you know? So the necessity of rest, the necessity of brotherhood and communion and spending time with one another to say, you've taken it, let me take it further. Or you can pass it. Or we can walk in lockstep. It's so incredible. And you're building that community through your publication, you know, admittedly, for inspiration, through aspiration of people seeing or reading to say, I can go. I can do. We can. They can, in terms of allies. And all of that is so incredibly powerful. And as you mentioned, there's been ups, there's been downs, and, you know, personally, I'm sure there's been challenges. As you mentioned, of like sleepless nights, tears possibly, you know, fractured, burdened, challenged relationships, you know, collateral damage, all of those things I'm sure baked into all of this as well. walk us through and not that it is linear, the evolution of your experience. You know, you mentioned Alex, you mentioned the publication, you mentioned building to the point that it is now. But we all know that it hasn't been just this, you know?
Yeah.
Walk us through like some of those moments so that others can see, like, yo, Leroy did it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't roses.
It wasn't roses.
Yeah.
It wasn't roses, bro. And I think, particularly for our generation, you know, I'm a millennial, so I'm assuming most of us here are millennials. We've grown up in the overnight celebrity. I mean, Steve and I were talking about that. We've grown up in the overnight celebrity generation. From the Apples to the tech giants to the social media influencers. It looks like on the surface level, everybody became successful overnight. You know, and we've been sort of inundated with that message. And so to come up with an idea today and to not have it become a reality tomorrow feels like a failure. You know, and it's like, but then you sit back and you assess the situation, you assess the environment, you listen to people who are successful, you hear their stories, and you understand it is a process. One of the greatest, so you asked about my sort of ups and downs. When I decided to start this publication, it was purely a passion project. And then I recognized the greater need for it, and that added on another layer of like pressure, if you will. And so I had to search for examples of successful publications that I could connect and relate to and gain some wisdom from. And it was difficult because I couldn't find a book about a Black person that had created a successful magazine or publication. I struggled to, and then eventually I did. And I found The Man from Essence by Ed Lewis, one of the founders of Essence Magazine. 4 Black men founded Essence Magazine. And I read that book from cover to end. And the wisdom I gained from that book, seeing how it took them 10, 15 years to become profitable, and understanding every challenge they had from day one, both externally and internally. Every challenge, every obstacle, every personal dilemma, a personal ego, every fundraising issue that they had to navigate and go through. It made me sit back and say, okay, all right, I'll be okay. I'm gonna go through some shit, excuse my language. I'm gonna go through some hard days, but I have a roadmap that I can follow and at least help me mitigate the impact of those burdens or those roadblocks, those barriers. And even still, having that roadmap, having that blueprint, it still hasn't felt easier by any regard. You know, I lay down at night worrying about how am I gonna keep something going when I don't have any money, and I'm learning everything is new in this space. And what's really keeping me going is not only my passion, but the passion that everyone else around me has for it. And I think what has really just allowed me to keep moving forward has been those two things. One, the passion that everyone else has around it. Everyone that's around me has for it. Like, we need this publication. This is important. Let me show and tell you why it's important. And the other part of it is I like to say, like, looking at real world lived experiences and understanding this is not gonna happen tomorrow. And how dedicated are you to it? Are you willing to go through that pressure and that fire 3, 5, 8 years maybe before you start to see the fruits of your labor? And if you're not, then maybe you need to rethink your decisions. You know.
That everything that you just said reminds me of, oddly enough, literally JayZ. and like thinking, you know, a segment when, you know, J. Cole was on Rock Nation, and literally an intro was like a kid pouring cereal, trying to be me, trying to come for me and take my spot. I'm gonna find him, I'm gonna sign him. And that literally is like running through my brain, because I'm like, there's a kid right now that's looking at your work and saying, I can do a publication.
And you don't know, you don't feel that in the moment, bro. You don't feel that in the moment.
And then you sit and reflect and you're like, wait, I've run into that kid before. Or either I was that kid. You know, like, so profound when you reflect back on moments of the hustle, the grind, the tears, the reflection. the silence,
Yeah. Oh man.
and know that literally there's someone else that's just a kid now that's looking into the future saying, I want to be right there.
Yeah.
That is for me. That's
Yeah.
what I want. So thank you for sharing that.
No, I appreciate you,
It's
bro.
just a moment
Yeah.
that, wow, immediately came to mind.
Yeah.
Immediately. So.
With that in mind, Leroy, like, what continues? I mean, we've had several guests, and what continues to permeate is mentorship.
Oh man.
Of I didn't know it all. My mentor didn't know it all, but
Yeah.
they had like the wherewithal and the insight to say, take a right when I was thinking I should go left.
100%.
You know, were you fortunate enough to have one of those people, or numerous of those people? And if so, do you want to acknowledge?
Crazy enough, I've always considered that I've actually never had any mentors. Like after I graduated high school and I was just out, into the world, it always felt like I didn't have a mentor, someone I could go to directly. That said, there have been people I picked things up from, but I say in my adulthood and my entrepreneurship life, there hasn't been any particular person. And so because of that, I've had to make some.
Yeah.
And so what I'll tell people is I picked up my dedication and my commitment from Denzel Washington. Like Denzel has this quote, like if you're not committed, you'll never start.
Yeah.
And if you're not consistent, you'll never finish.
Yep.
Right? Discipline and consistency. And I always go back to those phrases. I always go back to Denzel. Ava DuVernay, she creates with truth. Her films, her content about the Black experience in America, it's all based around truth. And she's unapologetic about it. And so I picked that up from her. I'm gonna create with truth, unapologetically. Our stories can often be very painful and heavy.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to embrace that, then I don't wanna work with you, because I'm creating truth.
Yeah.
You mentioned JayZ. He has a quote, everybody has a genius in them, but you have to find that genius
Yeah.
and then pursue that genius. Like that has stuck with me
Yeah.
ever since I heard that quote.
Yeah.
So the Denzels, the Issa Raes of the world, who created something with her bare hands and her gut and her passion, like those have been mentors and role models that I've had to create, because in adulthood, it didn't really feel like there was someone there that I can go to directly. There have been bits and pieces along the way, but it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
Because when I have found potential mentors or folks that have brought value in real life that I know and I can call right now, Mr. Carter could be a great example of that. It has provided so much relief because I know that I'm on the right direction. Or if I'm not, to your point, there's a piece of advice or suggestion that just realigns me back onto the right, like, this is where you need to be going, and that has been so powerful. 2 weeks ago, that happened in a very powerful way. They took my brand to a whole new level. And it was just literally a dude I met at an incubator program who learned about the magazine, who saw my bag, and he was like, bro, your bag is your brand. Like, I know what you're trying to do, but this is it for you. And he was like, sometimes as us as entrepreneurs, especially Black entrepreneurs, we're going hard down one road, pushing the car, and the wheel is falling off. And sometimes it takes someone coming in and putting that wheel back on and saying, you're going the right way, but let me help you readjust your thinking. And he literally helped readjust my thinking. And I was like, oh, damn, that's phenomenal, And so it's been like that, and that takes just, making yourself open to all of those different types of, voices and pieces of advice and people who can bring in those different types of experiences through mentorship. So important, man.
Yeah.
So important.
And that brings to mind two things for me. The first of which is just as you mentioned, a slight deviation changing the world.
Yeah.
And I try to encourage people to go one click east and then point for 12 miles and see how far away from where, if you went in a straight line, how far away you'd be, with just that perception. And just like one, can change the world, just as you mentioned, just opening your eyes of like, oh, that's my brand.
Yeah.
That's my move. just from one person.
Yeah, one per person, bro.
Is incredible, and who knows how fruitful that could be, and where that could lead to. The second of which is largely rooted within a lot of what we're doing right now, around masculinity, and around mentorship, and more importantly, surrounding vulnerability. To say, what do you think? Or I don't know. What do you think? And things of that nature, and openness to hearing feedback. The sentiment of iron sharpens iron, things of that nature. But what is often misconstrued as the process of sharpening iron. It is ugly. It is hard, and it takes a lot of work from someone to say, I don't know, I need some help, or where can I take my brand? Just like a fresh set of eyes to say, like, in the moment, it doesn't seem like a lot, but looking back at it, it's like, I didn't know. And I wanted you to tell me. Things of that nature that we have to continue to challenge ourselves internally, but also communally. Just say, like, it's cool not to know.
Man,
it's cool to ask. It's cool to be curious. All of those things, like, it's okay. Because it leads to really exceptional things. And it leads to really exceptional stories and exceptional output and magazines and publications. And things of that nature that you are stewarding right now. So those two things just like really struck me when you were saying all of those things, and all the people that you just mentioned in your story, that have like really elevated and shifted and reframed some of the things that you're doing. Marcus, I don't know if that struck you.
Yeah. I mean, as always, I think the conversations that have been had, in this space on this podcast thus far, but also what we've just had over the past day and a half have been just so profound. The vulnerability is something that I'm constantly learning, and I feel like the brotherhood that we've established through this event has just opened my eyes to spaces to grow, and just being willing to say, I don't know. But can you help me?
Can you help me? And it's so, man, like, we were talking last night, a few of us, just about like the lone hero story, where particularly in like communities that have faced oppression, there's always this idea or this storyline that there was one person who helped liberate the entire community. For us, it's the Martin Luther Kings of the world, right? And there's no acknowledgement of the community and the people around them that provided advice and support and encouragement. And so even in entrepreneurship for us, it's like, I can build this myself. Especially as men, I can build this myself. I'm gonna show you that I'm capable of building this myself. And it's like, bro, you don't know everything. The people that are crazy successful that you're probably aspiring to be like, some of those I just mentioned, also didn't know everything. But the parts of the success stories, those particular parts are often left out because it's supposed to be this bright and finished product that everyone should be aspiring to, and if you're not aspiring to it, you're lazy. It's like, no, those people also didn't know. It took help, it took questions, it took being vulnerable, and that is certainly something, I'm still on that growth path as well. It's like, I want to build this publication, I am building this publication, I want it to be successful, and I move at a certain pace. But bro, if you keep going that way, you're not gonna get it to where it deserves to be. You gotta ask for help. You gotta be vulnerable enough to do so. Understand that doesn't mean you're unintelligent, you're not passionate, you're not capable. It literally just means you're a human being like everybody else, and you need help. And be okay with that. And growth comes through that.
Agreed. Of course, I've been privy to a lot of, chatting and conversation with you today. So I want to jump to how and what you're doing to consume the outdoors now. And also historically. I mean, you've traveled so many places, you've done so many things. Give us some highlights and give us what you're doing now in terms of consumption of outdoors.
So right now, I'm participating in things like this. I'm on the board with Brothers in the Land, where we take young black boys hiking, kayaking, fishing, fly fishing, just introducing them to different outdoor spaces. A couple weeks ago, we took a group of boys to Gardner State Park up in about an hour outside of San Antonio. And, you know, for many of them it was their first time hitching a tent. It was my first time hitching a tent. So, you know, we were camping out, swimming in the lake, just really being in that space and just absorbing as much of it as I can to see how I show up in it. You know, I've been very fortunate enough to like live in countries or travel to countries where I can like go on amazing hikes. If it's Ethiopia and the Simeon Mountains, or you know, China and climbing the Great Wall, and you know, traveling through India. And so I've been able to experience outdoor spaces in different countries at a very deep, you know, intimate way. And I think now what's important for me is I'm using the outdoors. I see the outdoors as an opportunity to improve my relationship with the United States.
Okay.
Today I posted a video of us when we stopped at the Outlook, I forget what it's called. We pulled up right before we got to the park, and we all got out of the van. We were looking out. It was this beautiful Diablo Trail outlook. And I saw the video today, and I put this caption. I said, I love traveling in the US. Why? This country has taken so much from us and given so little that my relationship with it is often painful. But when I travel the country and I see the beauty, I can fall in love with it again and feel at peace. In those moments, I'm able to separate the anguish that I have for the US from the peace and the joy that I have from the US. And so now with the outdoors, you know, next year I'm taking the magazine on a road trip, and we're gonna hit the Four Corners, you know, and just camp out and hike out and meet other Black people in those states that are in the outdoors. Because the goal is not only to show us what we can do, to highlight the history of what we've done, but also to improve my relationship with this country. I want to love this country.
Yeah.
It's often difficult to love this country as a Black man, but I want to. And I think if I continue to travel through it, experience different spaces, meet new people, be in spaces like this, it can help improve my relationship with this country, despite everything else that we have to deal with. And so that's where I'm at right now with the outdoors. It's, again, feeding into that relationship I have with it that I spoke to earlier, because as I'm on this entrepreneurship journey, it's hard. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
And being outside in the outdoors gives me strength, gives me renewed energy. Being next to water revitalizes me. But then I also think it's just a way for me to see this beautiful country and meet really cool people. And I can say, you know what? There's some horrible things here that we have to face, but there's also some beauty and joy in it.
Yeah.
And so how do I create a space or a situation where the beauty and the joy far outweighs the trauma and the anguish?
Yeah.
You know, and I think outdoors can be a great place for me to do that.
I most certainly agree.
Yeah.
I most certainly agree. You got something else?
Well, I think we're coming close to time and wrap, but I missed two things that I want to ask you, just so we can get to know each other better. What are you consuming right now? And this can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
You know, reading, music. I mean, music's just high in our family lineage and that importance.
Yeah.
But what are you consuming that you want to share and that's meant the most to you, and that you think sharing on a publication would connect people and they'll find value in it?
Yeah. Well, so I recently just wrapped up 2 great books, Traveling Black by Dr. Mia Bay. Actually interviewed her on a podcast.
Dope.
And it just left me. The Black Traveler's Journey, something to that effect. Black American travel up until the Civil War through the U.S. And basically both books are talking about what segregation looked like on the buses, the trains, the steamboats, all of these things. And the second book, and I'll get the title for it, the second book, the author walks us through Frederick Douglass and other, Black intellects at the time, if you will, who could, one, finally get a passport, but then also started to travel abroad. And what stood out to me in that particular book was Frederick Douglass when he was traveling through Ireland and the UK, he was giving anti-slavery speeches. He talked about when he left the US and he was traveling on these foreign waters, he felt so much lighter and happier. And then he talked about as he was coming back to the US, he could feel the racial tensions, even though he hadn't gotten to the country yet. That's how far of an extension, how powerful the forces of the racial tensions were. And what it reminded me of was today, when I talk to Black travelers who have left the US or who have gone into the outdoors, they talk about how they feel a little bit lighter, they feel a bit more at peace, they feel a bit more joy and happiness, particularly when they leave the US. And then when we come back to the US and we get through TSA and we're going through those security check lines, there's a weight that falls over us. And we're like, what the hell where did that come from? And it made me think about that. I thought about that when we were during the presentation, and Rob was just talking about those sort of hidden sensations and the traumas that we carry and don't recognize. And I've talked to Black travelers. I'm like, do you think we recognize as a people the weight and the anguish and the pain that we carry on the daily? And so a lot of us, we probably don't until we leave the US. Yeah. And we don't have to worry about being Black. We can just be, you know? And so I encourage people to like read books that relate to Black people traveling. Even if it's just in the outdoors, like getting into different spaces. Read the historical accounts, because you're gonna see some of the trauma that you're carrying, and then you're gonna see how they dealt with it. And for me, recognizing that Frederick Douglass felt the same way that I feel today when I leave the US was so profound. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Like, this is real, you know? The last book I'm consuming right now is called You Sound Like a White Girl, The Case Against Assimilation. It's by a Latinx author, and she talks about how when she was in middle school, this guy she had a crush on told her, "You sound like a white girl." And she took it as a compliment. And so in her book, she particularly focuses on like English, the ideas of success within the American context. And she talks about how in order to achieve American success or become more American, you, people of color, particularly have to suppress or reject your own culture. Assimilation is so toxic that speaking Spanish is a negative thing, right? Or speaking Ebonics, as we call it, or Black American vernacular, is a bad thing. So you don't do those things, and essentially you are rejecting your own culture. And to read that, and then to see some of the similarities across her experience as a Hispanic woman and my experience as a Black man, I'm like, oh my gosh, like we have very similar experiences within the context of those sort of situations. And so I just like to tell people, one, read historical accounts of things that are not directly related to the civil rights movement, if you will. There are many other different types of Black histories out there that we can dive into, but also like consume content, music and books and TV shows, if you will, from different cultures and ethnicities. There's so much value there to learn how other people are living in the world or experiencing the world just by reading a book from someone different than you, you know? So that's what I'm consuming a lot of today. A lot of content from different cultures and backgrounds that I'm not particularly familiar with.
Three books on the list now.
Man.
Good look. Maybe audio book for this flight home. You never know. Last thing to wrap up with, open the floor for shout outs. You know, shout out to, Uncle Luke, shout out to Mama, shout out to Alex, whoever. This is your time, and plug the publication too.
Bro, I appreciate you. Shout out to this moment here. Shout out to you fellas, you gents, man. I know this is tough work, but I can see your passion and your joy for it. So shout out to folks who are creating nothing from scratch. You know, man, it's not easy. I'm there with you in spirit. Keep pushing forward. Shout out to Alex for just bringing me in this space, CJ and Mr. Carter for this space, all the fellas who showed up today. Man, my mom's, bro, like, I'd be nowhere without that woman, bro. Like, she's beyond my rock. She supports and encourages me in everything that I do, even if she doesn't understand it, which is difficult for Black parents. But shout out to my mom, shout out to my girl who, has been so affirming. Bro, we talk about how difficult it is to do this, to do it as a Black man, and to come home to a woman who does nothing but encourage me, uplift me, support me, doesn't let me think about quitting, encourages me to rest. Man, I can't say how lucky I am to have found a partner like that in this world, And so shout out to everyone, man, who bought an issue of the Buddy Pass Travel magazine, to everyone who's pushing me to like get to the 50th edition, bro. Like, we're gonna do this 50 years. Like, to have that community and that support and that love, they don't see it. But when I'm struggling to get out of bed in the morning, I think about that. I think about those people, and I get out of bed. I go take a shower, I go work out, and I get to the work. So the people who don't often get that love, often get that recognition, every post, every purchase, every text, every phone call, it all matters. Yeah. It all matters. So thank you to the people who are just keeping me in mind and keep showing up for me, man. I would not be here without them. Yeah, would not be without them.
That's love. Plug the publication. Yeah. Where can we find you at?
So the Buddy Pass Travel magazine, which again, we're going to be renaming it, and we'll be launching that, announcing that soon. But you can find us on our website, thebuddypass.co, Instagram, primarily active on Instagram and TikTok, the Buddy Pass magazine on both of those platforms. You could follow me personally on Facebook. I post a lot. On IG, just find Leroy Adams. Any of those, you'll find me there. But yeah, man, we'll be in Atlanta next week for the Black Travel Expo. I'll then be in Kentucky in October, Louisville, Kentucky for No Madness Fest. So our magazine is coming around. Then we'll be on the road next year. Like I said, we're doing the Four Corners, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada, I think. Yeah, Nevada. So we'll be around, man. So I'm really excited to connect with people once we get on the road as we hit these different cities. It's a great publication. I'm not even saying that because I publish it. But it's a great publication, man. I'm impartial. It's a great publication. We're doing really cool stuff. And so, man, everybody tap in, bro. It's for everybody, man. Yeah, it's for us. It's for us. But others are welcomed. To respect the space, others are welcome. But it's for us, man. So I'm excited for it.
I love that. Yeah.
I love it.
I love it. Yeah, and before we wrap, man, Leroy, I just want to say thank you.
I appreciate you, bro.
Man, for what you're doing and the way in which you are stewarding, your work for influence, for inspiration for others, man. It's, people don't oftentimes get their flowers in real time, but I want to give you those,
I appreciate
man.
you, bro.
So,
yeah, man.
So just keep going.
I appreciate it,
man. Yeah. And it's really easy for me to say that when I'm not waking up and writing and doing all the things that you're doing. But you need to hear it,
Yeah.
So keep doing what you're doing because it's impactful, and the community needs it. So I just want to say thank you.
I appreciate it, bro. Absolutely appreciate that.
Second that. I'm looking forward to following and supporting in every way. As always, it's love.
Yeah. I appreciate y'all, bro.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And that's a wrap.
Yeah.
Peace.